My name is Tyler Morgan and I am from Indiana, USA. I never believed in ghost stories or cursed roads because I always thought people created those stories to scare strangers until one cold October night changed everything forever. I had just finished my shift at a warehouse outside Bloomington. It was almost midnight, and I wanted to reach home as quickly as possible. The highway was completely blocked because of a major accident. My phone suggested another route through Hoosier National Forest. It would save almost 40 minutes. I had heard strange stories about that forest from local truck drivers. They always warned people never to drive there after midnight. They said if someone was standing alone beside the road, you should never stop no matter how normal they looked. I laughed every time I heard those stories. That night I ignored every warning and turned onto the forest road. Within a few minutes the city lights disappeared behind me. Tall trees surrounded both sides of the road and the darkness became so heavy that my headlights could barely reach ahead. The air felt strangely silent. There were no birds, no insects, no wind. Then my phone suddenly lost all signal. A second later the GPS screen turned black, and something appeared in the middle of the road waiting for me. Tyler slammed on the brakes and the truck stopped. Only a few feet away from the figure standing in the middle of the road was a young woman wearing an old gray coat. Her long hair covered most of her face, and both of her hands were wrapped around what looked like a small blanket. She never moved, she never waved. She simply stood there as if she had been waiting for him. Tyler lowered his window and asked if she needed help. The woman remained completely silent. After several seconds, she slowly lifted her head. Her face looked pale, but completely normal. Her lips barely moved before she whispered, "Cedar Falls." Tyler knew there was no town called Cedar Falls anywhere near Hoosier National Forest. He checked his phone again, but there was still no signal. He looked back at the woman and noticed something strange. The blanket in her arms looked heavy, but nothing inside it moved. For a moment he remembered every warning he had ever heard about this road. He almost drove away, but guilt stopped him. Leaving someone alone in the middle of a freezing forest after midnight felt impossible. He unlocked the passenger door. The woman quietly climbed inside. The moment she closed the door, every light inside the truck flickered. Then the outside temperature on the dashboard suddenly dropped from 43 degrees to 19. Without saying a single word, she slowly turned her face toward Tyler and smiled. Tyler forced himself to keep his eyes on the road. He told himself there had to be a logical explanation for everything that was happening. The woman stayed perfectly still. She never blinked. She never looked away from him. The blanket remained tightly wrapped in her arms, but there was still no movement from inside it. Several minutes passed without either of them speaking. The silence inside the truck became unbearable. Tyler finally asked where she lived, but the woman gave no answer. A cold feeling ran through his body. He glanced at the passenger side window. The glass was covered with frost from the inside. His own breath was visible. The woman's breath was not. Tyler slowly looked toward her hands. They were pale enough to almost blend into the blanket. Then he noticed something that made his heart stop. Her fingers were far too long. They slowly tightened around the blanket as if something inside was trying to escape. A weak sound suddenly came from beneath the cloth. It sounded exactly like a baby crying. Tyler turned toward her in shock. The woman smiled again. Then she whispered, "Do not look inside." At that exact moment, every light on the truck went out. The engine died. The truck rolled to a stop in complete darkness. Then someone knocked on the driver's side window. 3 slow knocks. Even though the woman was still sitting beside him, Tyler felt every hair on his body stand up as the knocking came again. This time it was louder and slower. He was too afraid to move, but his eyes slowly turned toward the driver's side window. A tall man was standing outside the truck. His face was hidden beneath a dark hood and one hand rested against the glass. He looked directly at Tyler and quietly mouthed for words, "Do not let her stay." Tyler's heart started racing. He quickly looked toward the passenger seat. The woman had not moved even an inch. She was still holding the blanket and staring straight ahead as if the man outside did not exist. The crying sound inside the blanket became louder, filling the silent truck with an unbearable echo. Then the hooded man knocked one final time and pointed toward the passenger door. Before Tyler could understand what he meant, the woman slowly turned her head toward him. Her smile disappeared and her voice became cold. "Do not open that door." The moment she finished speaking, the hooded man vanished without making a sound. There were no footsteps, no shadows, nothing. He had simply disappeared. A second later, the truck engine started by itself. The headlights came back on and the road ahead was empty, as if nothing had ever happened. Then Tyler looked into the rearview mirror and his blood turned cold. Someone was sitting in the back seat. It was not there before. Tyler slowly looked into the rearview mirror and felt his heart almost stop. A little boy was sitting on the back seat. His clothes looked old and soaked with water. His head was lowered and both of his hands rested on his knees. Tyler had checked the truck only a few minutes earlier. There had been no one in the back. Tyler instantly looked toward the passenger seat, hoping the woman would explain what was happening. Instead, she was staring at the mirror with an expression that looked almost frightened. For the first time since entering the truck, she spoke with urgency. "Never look into his eyes." Tyler immediately looked back at the road, but curiosity slowly took control of him. He could still see the boy through the corner of the mirror. The child slowly raised his head. His skin was unnaturally pale and dark water dripped from his hair onto the seat. Then he smiled. A soft voice filled the truck. "Please help me, I cannot find my mother." Tyler's hands tightened around the steering wheel. Every instinct told him to turn around, but the woman's warning echoed in his mind. The boy spoke again. This time his voice sounded exactly like Tyler's younger brother, who had died years ago. "Tyler, I am scared. Please do not leave me here." Tears filled Tyler's eyes. He almost turned his head. Then the woman suddenly screamed, "Run!" At that exact moment, the little boy's smile stretched across his entire face, and both of his eyes turned completely black. Tyler slammed his foot on the accelerator, but the truck refused to move. The engine was running, but it felt as if something outside was holding the vehicle in place. The little boy slowly stood up from the back seat. His head touched the roof of the truck. Even though he looked no older than 8 years old, every drop of water falling from his clothes disappeared before touching the floor. The woman suddenly grabbed Tyler by the arm. Her hand felt colder than ice, and she whispered, "Listen to me very carefully. Whatever happens, do not believe anything he says. He is not a child anymore." The boy laughed softly, and the sound echoed through the cabin like dozens of children laughing at once. Then he spoke in a calm voice, "She is lying, Tyler. She is the one who took me. She has been waiting for someone to carry her out of this forest." Tyler could no longer tell who was telling the truth. His breathing became heavier and his hands began shaking. The truck lights started flickering again, and every mirror inside the cabin slowly turned black. As the last light faded, Tyler noticed one terrifying detail. The woman beside him had completely disappeared. Only the blanket remained on the passenger seat. Then something cold touched the back of his neck. The little boy whispered, "Now there is nowhere left to run." Tyler spun around as fast as he could, but the back seat was empty. The cold breath was still against his neck, even though no one was behind him. His heartbeat pounded so hard that he could barely think. Then the blanket on the passenger seat began to move all by itself. It twitched once, then again, then something inside slowly pushed against the cloth, as if it was trying to crawl out. Tyler reached for the door handle, hoping to escape, but every door was locked. The power locks clicked over and over without opening. A soft cry filled the truck. This time it did not sound like a baby. It sounded like dozens of voices crying together. The blanket slowly unfolded by itself. Tyler held his breath. Inside was not a child. Inside was an old wooden doll with cracked skin and hollow black eyes. Around its neck hung a small silver tag with one word carved into it: "Return." The moment Tyler read the word, the truck engine roared back to life. The headlights switched on and illuminated the road. Ahead of him stood a weathered wooden sign: "Welcome to Cedar Falls." Tyler's blood ran cold. He remembered there was no town called Cedar Falls anywhere in Indiana. Yet an entire town was now waiting for him in the darkness. Tyler stared at the wooden sign for several seconds because he knew this town did not exist. He checked his phone once again, but the screen showed nothing except a black display. The road behind him had disappeared. Thick fog surrounded the truck from every direction. There was only one road left, and it led straight into Cedar Falls. As he drove forward, old wooden houses slowly appeared through the mist. Every porch light was glowing, but not a single person could be seen. The streets were completely silent. No dogs, no cars, no sound except the truck engine. Then Tyler noticed something impossible. Every house had its front door wide open. It looked as if every family had left in the middle of the night without taking anything with them. The truck suddenly slowed down by itself. In the middle of the town square stood an old church. Dozens of people were standing outside. None of them moved. None of them spoke. Every one of them was staring directly at Tyler. Their faces looked pale and expressionless. As the truck rolled closer, every person slowly lifted one hand and pointed toward the passenger seat. Tyler turned his head. The blanket was gone. The woman was sitting there again. This time her face was completely visible. Tyler's heart almost stopped. It was the exact same face as the little wooden doll. Then she smiled and quietly whispered, "You brought me home." At that exact moment, every person outside began walking toward the truck together. Tyler locked every door and pressed the accelerator as hard as he could. But the truck refused to move. The crowd kept walking closer without making a single sound. Their feet never touched the ground, yet they moved faster with every second. Every face looked empty. Every pair of eyes remained fixed on the passenger seat. The woman slowly picked up the wooden doll and placed it on her lap. Then she looked at Tyler and smiled, as if she had finally found what she had been waiting for. Her voice was calm but carried something that made Tyler feel sick. "I never asked you to save me, Tyler. I asked you to bring me back." The first person reached the truck and gently placed a hand on the hood. Then another. Within moments, dozens of pale hands covered the entire truck. The metal began to groan under their touch. Frost spread across the windshield until Tyler could barely see outside. Then every person spoke at the same time. "Thank you for returning her." The sound shook the entire truck. The windows began cracking. The dashboard lights flashed wildly. Suddenly, the woman turned toward Tyler and whispered, "There is only one way to leave this town." Before Tyler could ask what she meant, every person outside slowly smiled. Then they all pointed toward the church behind them. The old church doors slowly opened by themselves. Inside there was only darkness, and something enormous moved within it. Tyler knew he had only two choices. He could stay inside the truck and wait for whatever surrounded him to break through the glass, or he could walk into the church where something far worse was waiting. Neither choice felt like survival. The woman gently held the wooden doll against her chest and quietly said, "They cannot enter until you make your decision. The moment you step outside, they will leave you alone. But once you enter the church, you must never stop walking." Tyler looked through the cracked windshield. The crowd had formed a narrow path leading to the church entrance. Every person stood perfectly still with their heads lowered, as if they were waiting for him. His hand slowly reached for the door handle. The moment he stepped outside, every pair of eyes followed him. Not one person moved. Not one person blinked. Tyler forced himself to keep walking. The cold air grew heavier with every step. As he reached the church doorway, he felt something warm running down his neck. He touched it. His fingers came back covered in blood. There was no wound. The blood was falling from above. Tyler slowly looked toward the ceiling. Hundreds of people were hanging upside down across the roof. Their lifeless faces stared directly at him. Then every one of them opened their eyes together and whispered, "Welcome home, Tyler." Tyler stumbled backward, but the church doors slammed shut behind him. The sound echoed through the empty building like thunder. Every upside-down figure remained fixed to the ceiling. Their pale faces followed his every movement, but none of them climbed down. The only sound was the slow dripping of blood onto the wooden floor. Then the woman entered the church carrying the wooden doll in her arms. She walked past Tyler without looking at him and stopped in front of an ancient stone altar. She carefully placed the doll on top of it. The moment the doll touched the altar, every candle inside the church burst into flame. The room filled with a dull orange light. Tyler finally saw the walls clearly. Thousands of names had been carved into the wood. Every name had a date beside it. Some were from 50 years ago. Some were over 100 years old. Then he found one name that made his entire body freeze. Tyler Morgan. Under it was today's date. His name had been carved before he had ever entered the church. A cold voice whispered behind him, "You were chosen long before you found this road." Tyler slowly turned around. The little boy was standing only a few feet away. His black eyes were gone. Now they looked completely human. He quietly smiled and said, "You still have one chance to leave, but someone else must stay here forever." Tyler stared at the little boy, unable to understand what he meant. The church became completely silent. Even the candles stopped flickering. The boy slowly walked toward the altar and placed his hand on the wooden doll. And he looked at Tyler and quietly said, "Every soul trapped here was brought by someone else. Nobody leaves unless another takes their place. That is the oldest rule of Cedar Falls." Tyler felt the ground beneath his feet begin to shake. The names carved into the walls slowly started glowing one after another until only one name remained dark. His own. The woman finally turned toward him. Her face no longer looked frightening. Instead, it looked tired, as if she had been waiting for centuries. She spoke in a soft voice, "I never wanted you to die, Tyler. I only wanted someone brave enough to end this curse." Before Tyler could answer, a deep roar echoed beneath the church floor. The stone altar cracked down the middle and thick black smoke poured out into the room. The air became freezing cold. Something enormous began rising from the darkness. Only its hands appeared first. They were far too large to belong to any human. Long black fingers slowly gripped the edges of the broken altar. Then two burning white eyes opened inside the smoke. The little boy stepped back in fear. Even the woman lowered her head. Then the creature looked directly at Tyler and smiled. Finally, the last one has arrived. Tyler could not move. The creature slowly climbed out of the broken altar until its full body stood inside the church. It was taller than the ceiling, yet its head disappeared into the darkness above. Its skin looked like burned wood and long black chains hung from its arms. Every step made the entire church tremble. The little boy fell to his knees. The woman closed her eyes. Neither of them dared to look at the creature. It stopped in front of Tyler. Then it spoke in a voice that sounded like hundreds of people speaking together. "For 100 years I have waited for someone who entered this place by choice." Tyler gathered the last bit of courage he had left and asked, "What do you want from me?" The creature slowly raised one hand and pointed toward the wooden doll. "Destroy it." Tyler looked at the doll resting on the cracked altar. The woman suddenly screamed, "Do not listen to him." The little boy shouted at the same time, You must destroy it before sunrise. Tyler stood frozen because both of them were giving opposite warnings. The creature smiled. The woman cried. The little boy begged. Nobody was telling the same story. Then the church bell rang for the first time. 1, 2, 3. The creature looked toward the ceiling and whispered, "You have only 3 minutes left to choose." Then the wooden doll slowly opened its eyes and looked directly at Tyler. Tyler stared into the eyes of the wooden doll as its cracked lips slowly began to move. The voice that came from it sounded exactly like his own. "Mother Tyler, if you destroy me, every soul trapped here will disappear, including the little boy and the woman. They are victims, not monsters." The creature let out a furious roar that shook every wall inside the church. The chains hanging from its arms began dragging across the floor, leaving deep marks in the stone. The little boy grabbed Tyler by the sleeve and begged, "Please do not believe her. She has used that voice for generations. She says whatever people need to hear." The church bell rang again. Only 2 minutes remained. Tyler looked around, desperately searching for another way out. Then he noticed something hidden behind the altar. An old journal lay beneath the broken stone. Its pages were covered with dust. He opened the final page. One sentence had been written in faded ink. "The curse will end only when the one who brought her home returns her to the darkness." Tyler slowly closed the journal. His hands stopped shaking. He finally understood why the creature wanted the doll destroyed, why the woman wanted it protected, and why nobody had ever escaped Cedar Falls. He picked up the wooden doll. The woman screamed louder than ever before. The creature slowly stepped aside. The church bell rang for the final time. Sunrise was only seconds away. Tyler closed his eyes for one final moment. Then, with every bit of strength he had, he threw the wooden doll back into the darkness beneath the broken altar. The moment it disappeared, the woman released a scream so terrifying that every window inside the church exploded into thousands of pieces. The creature raised both of its hands toward the ceiling, and the black chains wrapped around the woman before pulling her into the endless darkness below. She kept reaching toward Tyler until the last second, then she vanished forever. The little boy smiled for the first time. "Thank you." His body slowly turned into white light and drifted toward the morning sky. One by one, every name carved into the church walls disappeared until nothing remained. The ground stopped shaking. The freezing air became warm again. The church around Tyler slowly began collapsing into dust. He ran outside just as the first rays of sunlight touched the forest. The town of Cedar Falls was gone. There was no church, no houses, no people, only an empty road surrounded by silent trees. A police officer found Tyler walking alone several miles away. When they searched the forest, they found nothing except his abandoned truck parked beside the road. Years later, Tyler never drove through Hoosier National Forest again. But every October on the same night, his phone receives a call from an unknown number. When he answers, nobody speaks. He only hears the soft sound of a child whispering, "Thank you for setting us free." So this is the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Follow Nightmare Files for more terrifying horror stories. See you in the next nightmare.